All right, today we're going to talk about a tool that's all about seeing the unseen. It's called a data flow diagram, or DFD for short. Think of it like a blueprint, but instead of a building, it maps out the secret journey data takes through, well, pretty much any system you can imagine, from a simple app on your phone to a massive global company.
I mean, really think about it for a second. When you order something online or just check your bank account, there's this entire, invisible world of information flying around behind the scenes. It's not like some old machine with gears you can actually watch turning. So how in the world do you draw a map of something you can't even see?
Okay, so the best way to get your head around a DFD is to think about a professional kitchen, right? A DFD is basically the blueprint for that kitchen. Your ingredients, that's the data. The chefs who are chopping and cooking and changing those ingredients, those are your processes. The pantry, where you store everything, that's your data store. And the customer who gets the final dish, that's what we call an external entity. A DFD just follows that whole journey, from raw ingredient all the way to a finished plate.
So, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll hit the basics. Then, we'll look at the 4 essential building blocks. After that, we'll see how you can stack these diagrams in different levels. We'll also touch on the 2 main flavors they come in. And finally, we'll talk about why this tool is still a huge deal today.
All right, let's dive right in. First things first, what is a data flow diagram really?
Okay, so at its core, a DFD is just a map. It's a map that follows the path of information. Now, this is super important. It's not a flowchart. A flowchart is all about logic. If this happens, then do that. A DFD completely ignores all that. It only cares about one thing, the data. Where does it start? What happens to it along the way? And where does it finally end up? That's it.
The cool thing is, every single DFD, no matter how ridiculously complex it looks, is made from just 4 basic parts. So, let's meet our cast of characters. First up, you've got the external entity. Think of these as the start and finish lines for your data. They're people or organizations or other systems that are outside the system you're mapping. A customer who places an order, or a passenger who books a flight. They send data in or get data out, but they aren't actually part of the system itself.
All right, next is the process. This is where all the action happens. A process is anything that actually changes or transforms the data. It takes inputs and creates outputs. That's why you'll always see them labeled with an action phrase, a verb, like validate account or buy ticket. These are the engines that make the whole system run.
So what about data that's just sitting there? Well, that's where a data store comes in. It's just a place where data is held for later. It could be a massive complex database, or it could literally be a physical filing cabinet. But here's a golden rule you gotta remember. Data can't just jump from one data store to another. Nope, it always has to go through a process first. Always.
And our last piece of the puzzle is the data flow. These are just the arrows that connect everything together. They're the pipes of your system, and you always label them with a noun that describes what kind of data is flowing through them, like order details or transport details.
Now, you're going to see these 4 components drawn using a couple of different symbol sets. The big 2 are Jordan code and Gain Sarsen. You can see they use slightly different shapes, like a circle versus a rounded rectangle for a process. But honestly, it doesn't matter which one you use. One isn't better than the other. The only thing that's absolutely crucial is to pick one and be consistent.
Okay, this is probably the DFD's biggest superpower, how it tames complexity. It's not just one flat diagram. It uses levels, like a hierarchy, that lets you go from a super high level, bird's eye view, all the way down into the nitty-gritty details. Let's break down how that works. So you always start at level 0. This is called the context diagram. It's as simple as it gets. It shows your entire system as just one single process bubble. That's it. Then you explode that bubble, you crack it open, and that reveals the level 1 diagram, which shows the main functions inside your system. And if one of those functions is still too complicated, you just explode it again into a level 2 diagram, and you keep doing that until every process is broken down into something super simple and easy to understand. But as you're building all these different levels, there is one rule that is absolutely non-negotiable. It's called balancing. All it means is that when you explode a process to show more detail, the inputs and outputs have to stay exactly the same. You can't have data just appearing out of nowhere or vanishing into thin air between levels. Whatever data flows into the parent bubble on the higher level has to flow into the more detailed diagram on the lower level. Same for the output.
Yeah, it all boils down to just being consistent. The inputs and outputs need to match perfectly. The names you give your data flows have to stay the same across levels. Every single piece of information has to be accounted for. It's this balancing act that makes a DFD so powerful and reliable. It's what makes it a blueprint you can actually trust.
DFDs also give us two totally different ways to look at a system, which is super helpful. You can think of it as the difference between the what and the how.
So you've got your logical DFD. This one is all about the business. It describes what the system needs to do without worrying about any of the technology. It's all about business activities. Then you've got the physical DFD. This is the how. It dives into the nitty-gritty of the actual implementation, the specific programs, the database tables, maybe even manual steps someone has to take. And usually we start with the logical DFD to make sure we understand what the business actually needs before we even think about how to build it.
Okay, I know what some of you might be thinking. DFDs have been around since the 1970s. Aren't they, a little old school? But the truth is, they're arguably more relevant today than they've ever been. Think about it. For re-engineering business processes, they're a fantastic way to spot inefficiencies. In cybersecurity, you absolutely have to know where your sensitive data is going, and a DFD maps that out perfectly, showing you potential risks. For system analysis, they're just an incredible tool for getting the business folks and the tech folks on the same page. And yeah, even in the fast-paced world of agile development, sketching out a quick DFD can save you so much time by clearing up requirements before you start coding.
And really, that's the core of it. When you take the time to map out how data actually flows, you're forced to get this incredibly deep understanding of how things really work. It pushes you past just assuming things and helps you design systems that have genuine clarity and a real purpose.
So let me just leave you with this thought. We all have these invisible systems in our lives, right? Whether it's at your job, in a side project you're working on, or heck, even just how you handle your own budget. They're everywhere. So my question to you is, what hidden flows in your world could a DFD reveal?